Hey everybody, how's it going? Here in the Pacific Northwest, Cascadia, sun's starting to come out, the fog is burning off, and this is kind of live, but I'm mostly doing this so it just records because I want this video to go out to everybody. And I'm excited to share with you because my most recent Kickstarter campaign just launched last year. Many of you helped bring this book to life. Shadow Survival, Guide to Tactical Awareness, Advanced Survival, Intuition, and More. Scoutcraft, Volume 1, right? It's Volume 1. So I'm ready to write Volumes 2 and 3, right? So first of all, thanks so much to everybody who helped make this possible. This is a really fun project. It's been great for me and my family and a lot of people. Clearly a hot button passion topic for people. So I appreciate your interest in this. So yeah, and now we're on to the next stages. And I've spent the last, several months looking at this, talking with friends, talking with some of you, getting your input, getting some input from all of you on some surveys I'm doing. And my plan, which several people have already shared with me, is an ambitious plan, which I totally appreciate. It is a little ambitious, is to write volumes 2 and 3 back to back this winter. Why am I doing that? Well, I think that there's probably about somewhere between 6 to 9 volumes in this set I want to do. And the enthusiasm and passion people have shown for the first book has been so great that I just want to really tap into that. And I also have more time in the winter to work on projects that I'm going to have in the summertime, next spring and summer. So the winter time is a really great time to drop deep into writing. So, yeah, and then, some of you who are watching this probably did some classes with me in the last year, so thanks for that. And for those of you who are just watching this and you don't know who I am, my name is Nate Summers. I've been a survival skills instructor for over 20 years. I was introduced to these things when I was a teenager, and I've been lucky enough for the last 5 years now, actually, to be writing books about this topic and sharing with people about it. I do still teach some in person, not as much as I'd like, but I also teach online and share this stuff with people around the world. I get a lot of people in Europe, New Zealand, South Africa. Folks show up sometimes, occasionally people from Central America, East Asia. So I just really appreciate the enthusiasm and support. And recently, I've written quite a bit about sort of ancestral living skills, survival skills, and I've made a little bit of a bigger jump now into more of the tradition of the Scout, the way of the Scout. Those of you who are connected to the Tom Brown School or some of the 8 Shields group or Deep Nature Connection work, you probably know what I'm talking about when I say, Scout skills or Scout awareness. I know some schools now are using the word ranger to kind of help people figure that out in relationship to Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. Though actually, if you look at the origins of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, they're actually, I think, kind of talking about the same stuff back in the day. Look at the origins of the Scouting movement way back. But basically, writing about and sharing about a tradition of people learning certain skills, certain ways of being in the world that are fundamental to helping humans thrive and survive, but not the super technical skills, though that's part of actually what I'll be covering in some of these books, but more the okay, what's the more subtle stuff? What's the hidden stuff? And realizing that when you look at the field of survival skills, you look at the books, you look at the videos, you look at the online courses, you look at the TV shows, they're kind of all talking about the same thing. There's about 90% of what they're saying, 95% is the same thing. There's kind of some divisions in there, like modern versus ancient and that kind of stuff, but it's a lot of the same. And then what I'm talking about is this whole kind of behind the scenes, what I talked about in the first book as shadow survival, right? So shadow survival. And now I want to go deeper with that and unlock some things. So the next 2 volumes, the plan is to do kind of almost a yin-yang pair, right? So that again kind of encompasses that balanced approach to, people who in all cultures around the world were trained in awareness, exploration, camouflage, stealth, and these are a whole set of survival skills our ancestors all needed, no matter where we come from. I researched that actually in the first book, and I'll share more about that in the second and third book. But no matter where we come from, there are these sets of skills that we use to survive. And yes, making fire is very clearly one of them. Shelters, that's kind of the obvious stuff, but what about those more subtle things? And the lineage of survival skills I've been trained in, there's actually multiple parts to it, but that was a big emphasis. This survival training includes a lot of awareness training, a lot of like really tuning into your surroundings and really tapping into the deepest levels of awareness in human beings. So what the 2 volumes are going to be, volume 1 is going to be a dive into the world of survival skills and even some of the hard survival skills, but through the lens of the scout, right? Through the lens of like the forest ninja, the ranger, like whatever that means, looking at survival skills that way. And I've developed a whole teaching around that I'm going to share. There's a whole framework. I'm going to talk about that in another video down the way. Maybe it'll be on YouTube. Maybe it'll be just a Zoom I do at home. But it's all about how we can take that approach of the scout and apply it to our modern lives, right? So like, for instance, if I'm really, really, really good at bow drill, right, which is a form of friction fire, many of you probably know this, or I'm really good at hand drill, and I'm good, let's say I'm good in the desert Southwest. I've done this actually down in the desert Southwest. I got my first solo hand drill cold down there. The materials are amazing, right? And yet I travel to the Pacific Northwest and I am like, well, I'm a badass. I can do hand drill and I'm so good at fire. And then something happens and I'm out in the Pacific Northwest and it's cold and it's wet and it's raining and I don't have a lighter with me, or I don't have matches with me, or I don't have some modern form of fire starting with me. To me, that's a failure of understanding like the scout approach to survival. Like we need to actually be prepared for all situations, like wilderness setting, our home, our vehicle, modern setting, like in the city. Like, so I will be looking at survival training, survival skills through the lens of that idea of the ancient scouts and the modern scouts. And there are people who are using this stuff all the time. And that's I'm going to hopefully do some interviews for this book with people who have been first responders, or they've been in the military, or they've been, police, like who are using some of what I'm talking about on a daily basis or as part of their lives. And a lot of times it's saved their lives, right? So, and a lot of my students either went on to do that kind of work, or people came to train in some of the places I've worked who had a background in that. And so I'm going to try to dive into that world as part of this project. Reach out to some of them. So some of you who are watching this, you know who you are. I'm going to be talking to you. I'm going to call you up, and I want to interview you for sections of the books. So that's volume 2, right? So this resilience, survival in any context, any situation, home, car, wilderness, modern setting, disaster preparedness, all of it, and not in like some encyclopedic way too, but more in like simple, clear ways of which you can use this approach and really thrive and feel good for yourself, your loved ones, other, from now and into the future through challenging times, or, even what we're going through now. Volume 3, so the yin to that yang, right? So if that one's more the yang, the more obvious, the yin, so the complementary to that is I am gonna write the volume after that on on awareness, right? Like on deep advanced awareness skills. I touched on that. There was a chapter in this book on that, and people loved it. And I did a class just about that, and people loved it. They were like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So there's this whole other set of skills that directly complement that. talked a little bit about it in the first book, but people wanted more of that. I want to say more about that. There's more stories coming in about that. People are directing me to other resources. And this is the thing about like the body radar, the gut intuition, the gut instincts, the peripheral awareness, like sensing when somebody's looking at you, the advanced bird language, not just like what are the birds saying, but like the deeper layers of reading concentric rings, tapping into your ability, mind's eye, to see things, inside your vision. There's this whole bundle around that. And, when you immerse yourself in nature and you have the right situation, the right context, those things tend to arise, right? They tend to start to enhance. I mean, many of the people I've talked to have had spontaneous experiences around this. And some of this, people who've been in the military or in law enforcement will talk about their spontaneous experiences of these things awakening, especially in dangerous situations. In fact, a lot of the people who reached out to me in the year since I wrote this book, some of them, who you are, the international folks, and who reached out to me and said, Nate, your book means so much to me because I grew up in a really tough situation. Some people have reached out to me who grew up homeless for a while, and how they had to rely on those instincts to stay alive in really tough circumstances. So I'm going to also offer in that book those stories, which are helpful and the validating that exists as part of being human. But more, I think what people will be really interested in, specific exercises, specific techniques that help unlock that, right? And we all will have different capacities around that. We'll all have different, affinities, things that feel really good for us or don't feel good for us. But that book will really unveil all that and share stories of people who've had those experiences, students, friends, colleagues of mine. And if you want to have a story in the book, I want to say this now, like if you want to have stories that go in the next 2 books, let me know. Write me a little paragraph. Like I can't put pages of stories in there. It's got to be like 2 or 3 paragraphs. Or you want to have a conversation with me about some of the stuff and you want it to go in the book, one of the books, let me know. Because that actually just makes the books better when it's your stories and your experiences doing these things. I share a lot of my stories, and I shared a lot of stories in Shadow Survival. I shared a lot of stories in Primal. Like, I shared stories in Awakening Fire, my book all about fire. But your stories, in fact, Awakening Fire, a book I wrote a few years ago, specifically, people shared some of their experiences with fire and teaching about fire skills. With Primal, I interviewed a lot of folks. So I want to, bring in some of that rich content into these works, because I feel like the stories are what brings it alive for all of us, right? And I learned these things through stories. Actually, somebody reached out to me. It's so cool. Michael's his name. He reached out to me recently. And he had the same first teacher I had back at the Ancient Life-Based Institute. He's like, there's some stories you've got to share, Nate. There's like lineage stories. I'm like, oh, yeah. So I got to talk to Michael, and we got to get on the phone and share these things and figure out, oh, yeah, does this go in the book or should it go in the book? But anyway, I just want to invite you all to participate in the Kickstarter. And so that's what this little live session is about, is joining me on the Kickstarter. It started yesterday. It goes until basically 4 weeks from today, Halloween midnight. It's like, I didn't really do that intentionally. That's just sort of how it turned out. But so with Kickstarter, though, the way they work, which I appreciate, is like you either get all the money, you reach your fundraising goal, or you go beyond it, or you don't get any of the money to make the project happening. So I'm inviting all of you to participate in the campaign however you can. Basically, those of you who participate in the campaign, the main way you participate is you contribute money. You're going to get an early copy of the book. And there's even some special versions of the book, like, I'll sign some copies, or you can get an e-copy of the book. You can get a hard copy of the book. You can get a paperback copy of the book. That's all coming. And it will, the goal is to have this come out in the spring, back to back, like April, May, or March, April, which is super exciting. And then all of a sudden people are excited about this book, and they're excited about this book, and then this book, and then it can, go to some of the top of some of those Amazon bestsellers. And then like all this stuff we're talking about, these ancient ways of being that, enhance our modern living, help us thrive, help us be prepared for dangerous situations, becomes like still alive. Like it stays alive, and then it also goes to the future generations. Like a big part of this, writing these books, has been the realization of my own children being at the age to really start to go deep into this. So my 18-year-old kid Ash has been instructing some of these things for preteens and early teens this last summer. And I'm 50. I turned 50 this year, just a little while ago. And it's like, okay, my legacy around this, or part of my legacy, is to create resources for people, that, especially for people who are already on this path and they want to go deeper, or they want a refresher, or they're like, oh yeah, they want to enhance their journey. But also for people who like haven't had the experiences I've had, or didn't have those teachers or mentors there. And sorry about that. Anyway, that's what I got to share. That's a Kickstarter. Over the next few weeks, until the Kickstarter campaign ends, I'll be putting out a video each week. I may be on YouTube. I might just do a Zoom at home. I don't think I'm going to do like an invite live event. It's just kind of a lot of management right now, and I need to actually focus on getting the campaign together and going in. And I have life stuff. I'm a dad. I have other work to do. I have other things I'm teaching. My son has soccer games. I need to get out and go out in nature and practice these things myself. There's salmon in the river, and I want to go check out, and I need to go tracking and go to my sit spot, and all this stuff. So, well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. And just would love to hear your inputs. Feel free to comment on this. And I appreciate your support. I'm excited to make this happen, and let's do it. And again, Kickstarter, all or none. So, I'm asking, I think, for a pretty modest amount. The money goes towards creating the book, editing the book, getting the book out, and printing the book. So anyway, thanks again, everybody, and look forward to talking to you soon.